Remember when Mel Gibson put a gun in his mouth and Danny Glover said he was too old for this? Lethal Weapon almost had a different director, different cast, and different ending. Today we're counting down 20 weird facts you never knew about Lethal Weapon. Number 20. Richard Donner's name on the credits feels inevitable when you watch Lethal Weapon. The action-comedy balance, the warmth underneath the violence, the way he pulls genuine friendship out of two men who had barely met. It all feels like the work of someone born to make this film. Here is the thing. Donner was not even close to being the first person asked. Warner Bros. Originally offered the director's chair to Leonard Nimoy. At the time, Nimoy was not a studio executive's obvious choice for a hard-edged cop thriller, and he knew it. He turned the job down because he was already committed to Three Men and a Baby, which went on to become the highest-grossing film of 1987, out-earning Lethal Weapon at the domestic box office. Producer Joel Silver had his own preference, waiting in the wings. He wanted Ridley Scott, but Warner Bros. Had blacklisted Scott over unresolved creative tension left over from the Blade Runner experience, and that door was firmly closed. Donner came in third in line, accepted without hesitation, and immediately made the creative decision that defined everything that followed. He wanted a real friendship between his two leads, not a movie friendship, and he built the entire production around proving that was possible. Every instinct Donner brought to this film came from being the last person standing after a director search that had already failed twice. Number 19. The Lethal Weapon screenplay feels like the work of someone who understood action, comedy, grief, and friendship all at once. The dialogue is fast and specific. The emotional beats land exactly where they should. It reads like a writer who had been doing this for decades. Turns out, the writer was barely old enough to rent a car. Shane Black was a recent UCLA graduate when he wrote the spec script in under 6 weeks in mid-1985. He was 23 years old. His first draft ran 140 pages and was so dark, so unrelenting in its portrait of a man with nothing left to lose, that Black threw it in the trash. Then he went back, retrieved it, and rewrote from scratch. He sold the rewritten draft to Warner Bros. Executive Mark Canton for $250,000 plus a $150,000 production bonus if the film was actually made. Multiple studios had already passed on it before Canton bought it. Black later admitted to The Hollywood Reporter that he told the studio directly he could not write a feel-good cop movie. The darkness was not a problem to be solved. It was the entire point. That $250,000 sale launched the spec script gold rush that transformed how studios acquired original material throughout the late 1980s. Black's later sales reached $1.75 million and eventually $4 million. Number 18. The Lethal Weapon screenplay has a specific electricity that is hard to fully explain. It moves fast, lands hard, and then pulls back just enough to let you breathe. That quality does not usually come from someone sitting alone in a room. It tends to come from people pushing each other. Black wrote the script while living in a shared West Los Angeles house that the residents called the Pad O Guys. His housemates included Fred Decker, who would write The Monster Squad, Ed Solomon, who would write Men in Black, Greg Wyden, who would write Highlander and Backdraft, and a young David Fincher, who was not yet a director but was a regular presence. According to former roommate Lauren Cantor, the group regularly staged and dissected John Woo fight scenes in the front yard at 3 in the morning. Black drove a rusted Mustang convertible and had no film credits to his name. The collaborative energy of that house meant Black's script was being pressure tested in real time. Jokes were tried out loud. Fight choreography was physically mimed on a front lawn. Structure was debated until sunrise by people who all believed they were going to change the industry. Most of them were right. Every writer in that house went on to a major career. Decker wrote The Monster Squad, Solomon wrote Men in Black, Wyden wrote Highlander. Fincher became one of the most celebrated directors of his generation. Number 17. Mel Gibson as Martin Riggs feels completely right in a way that makes it hard to imagine anyone else in the role. The recklessness, the grief tucked underneath the grin, the specific physical energy that makes him look like he might do something genuinely dangerous at any moment. It all seems perfectly matched. What is remarkable is how many other films Gibson walked away from before arriving here. Before signing for Lethal Weapon, Gibson rejected the role of John McClane in Die Hard, the part of Elliot Ness in The Untouchables, and Seth Brundle in David Cronenberg's The Fly. He had spent nearly 2 years completely off the grid at his Australian cattle ranch. After Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome and in 1985 People magazine had named him their first ever sexiest man alive, he could have walked into virtually any studio picture he wanted. Donner offered him the role by telephone. According to Empire's 25th anniversary reunion coverage, a production assistant called the ranch and was told by Gibson's wife that he was out mucking the cattle. There was no audition, there was no screen test. Donner just asked, and Gibson said yes, Gibson chose Lethal Weapon because the suicidal backstory felt like something he had never seen treated honestly inside an action film. The 3 films he declined each became critical landmarks. His instinct to go darker proved correct. Number 16. The Beretta 92F that Riggs carries through Lethal Weapon is one of the most recognized prop guns in action film history. If you look closely at the following year's Die Hard, you will notice something. That is the same gun. Bruce Willis was offered the role of Riggs and passed. According to his own recollection in Entertainment Weekly, Demi Moore read the script and called it too violent. Willis later said he was glad the decision worked out the way it did. Here is what makes the story remarkable. The Beretta 92F prop pistol used by Mel Gibson as Riggs was reconfigured for left-handed use and became the weapon John McClane carries through Die Hard. Same producer in Joel Silver, same composer in Michael Kamen. One actor's reluctance handed both a role and a prop to another actor, and a parallel franchise grew from that single decision. Willis ended up on the same Warner Bros. Lot the following year, working with the same producer using the same prop gun. The overlap between the 2 productions is almost entirely accidental. One casting conversation changed the trajectory of both films. Every close-up of that Beretta in Riggs's hands during Lethal Weapon is also a glimpse of the weapon that was about to make someone else famous in a completely different story. And the actor who ended up standing across from Riggs nearly did not get that role either. And the director's first reaction to his casting is something he spent years being. Number 15. Danny Glover as Roger Murtaugh is so foundational to Lethal Weapon that his warmth and exhaustion feel like they were always part of the design. His stillness against Gibson's volatility creates a dynamic that carries the entire film. None of that was in the script. Shane Black's screenplay described Murtaugh only as going on 50. No ethnicity, no physical description beyond age. Casting director Marion Doherty had just seen Danny Glover in The Color Purple and brought him to Richard Donner as a suggestion. Donner's immediate verbal response was, "But he's black." He caught himself immediately and recognized the instinct he was fighting. He later told Empire in their 2012 reunion that the moment changed his way of thinking, and that he felt genuinely stupid for the reaction. Before Glover was ever mentioned, Brian Dennehy had actually been offered the role first. Dennehy turned it down because he felt he had played too many cops. The role then sat without an obvious home until Doherty made her suggestion. Glover and Donner met shortly after, and Donner later said the casting transformed the film entirely. The contrast between Glover's groundedness and Gibson's fragility created a dynamic the script had not fully anticipated or written. Doherty's decision to bring Glover in against the script description is the single most consequential casting choice in the film. Murtaugh's specific humanity was not written. It was brought entirely by an actor whose presence was not originally part of anyone's plan. Number 14. The friendship between Riggs and Murtaugh is so convincing across 4 films that it is easy to assume Gibson and Glover spent months preparing together before cameras ever rolled. The ease between them suggests deep familiarity, a long history, something that could not possibly have been manufactured quickly. They met for the first time at a single table read arranged by casting director Marion Doherty in early 1986. Donner's own account in Empire's reunion is that within 2 hours, both actors had improvised jokes that were not in the script, discovered emotional beats the writing had not anticipated, and found moments of genuine tenderness that surprised everyone in the room. He said he was in 7th heaven by the time the session ended. After the table read, Donner sent both actors into 2 months of joint training with stunt coordinator Bobby Bass, a former United States Army Special Forces judo champion. He also arranged LAPD ride-alongs for both of them together, not separately, so that their behavioral rhythms and physical reference points were being built from the same shared experiences. Bobby Bass drilled Gibson and Glover together until their physical instincts matched before a single line of dialogue was filmed. The ride-alongs gave both actors specific details from working Los Angeles detectives that never appear in the script, but inform every scene in the film. The friction and warmth between Riggs and Murtaugh was discovered in one afternoon and trained into both actors' bodies over 2 months. Number 13. Lethal Weapon has a specific comic rhythm that feels slightly different from Shane Black's other work. It is more generous, warmer, and less likely to let a dark moment sit without some kind of release. If you have ever watched the film and thought the humor felt like it came from a different sensibility than the grief, you were not wrong. Donner thought Black's draft was too dark for a commercial release, and quietly brought in screenwriter Jeffrey Boehm to perform uncredited punch-ups throughout the script. Boehm had written The Dead Zone and Inner Space. He was brought in specifically to soften the most extreme edges of Riggs' psychology and add comic breathing room to scenes Black had written as sustained tension. Black told the AV Club that when he saw what had been done, he acknowledged directly that the studio wanted a comedy and that was not what he had built. He accepted the outcome, but he considered the alterations a fundamental change to his original intent. Boehm went on to write Lethal Weapon 2 and Lethal Weapon 3. The comedic sensibility that most audiences associate with the franchise is predominantly Boehm's contribution, not Black's. The two men created different versions of the same characters without ever directly collaborating on a single draft. The uncredited rewrite is why Lethal Weapon works as both a genuinely dark character study and a crowd-pleasing action comedy at the same time. Neither writer alone produced what audiences saw on screen. Number 12. The finale of Lethal Weapon is contained and personal: a lawn, two men, and a fight in manufactured rain. It is intimate by design, and it works precisely because the film keeps pulling back to the human level, when you might expect it to go bigger. Shane Black's vision for the climax was on an entirely different scale. His early draft ended with a cocaine-loaded truck exploding above the Hollywood Hills, the drug raining down on Hollywood Boulevard below, and the Hollywood sign going up in flames. The Los Angeles Times reported on the concept in March 1987 as an example of the kind of excess that had been stripped from the production. The studio eliminated the sequence before principal photography began, and the reason was straightforward. There was not enough money. Black recycled a version of the plane dumping cocaine concept into his Lethal Weapon 2 draft, which Warner Bros. Also rejected for separate reasons that we will get to shortly. The decision to cut the ending and find something smaller forced the production to locate a finale that still felt like a climax, without the spectacle. The result is the lawn fight in the rain, which Donner has consistently described as the sequence he is most proud of in the entire film. The budget ceiling that eliminated Black's vision accidentally produced a more emotionally effective ending than the intended spectacle would have been. The studio made the right call for the wrong reason. Number 11. The opening shot of Amanda Hunsaker falling from her balcony is one of the most striking images in Lethal Weapon. It is precise, beautiful in the wrong way, and horrible in exactly the right way. It establishes the film's emotional tone in about 10 seconds. Legendary stuntman Dar Robinson designed the 3-stage airbag rig and the painted canvas illusion that makes the fall look completely real. He also appears briefly on screen in the mercenary desert sequence. Within weeks of Lethal Weapon's production wrap, Robinson died in a motorcycle accident on the set of Million Dollar Mystery in Arizona. He did not live to see the completed film. The movie closes with a dedication to Dar Robinson, one of the motion picture industry's greatest stuntmen. It is the only place his name appears in the final credits. Actress Jackie Swanson, not a stunt double, performed the backwards 35-foot fall herself in that opening sequence, trained by Robinson before his death. The specificity of the fall, the angle of it, the way her body moves through the air, came from a stunt designer who gave her everything he knew about how to do it safely, and then was gone before cameras rolled. Every audience member who has ever watched the opening scene has watched Dar Robinson's final completed work. The dedication at the end of the film is the only acknowledgement most of them ever received. Alright, we're at the halfway mark, and things are about to get even wilder. Before we hit the top 10, I want to hear from you what's your favorite Lethal Weapon quote or moment. Drop it in the comments, and if you're enjoying this, smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It really does help the channel grow. Number 10. Lethal Weapon has a visual style that is simultaneously gritty and cinematic. Los Angeles feels real in it and heightened at the same time. The opening images in particular have a quality that is hard to name, a stillness inside violence, beauty inside horror. That quality was not accidental, and the story of where it came from is one of the more striking decisions in the film's production. Cinematographer Stephen Goldblatt walked into Richard Donner's office carrying a print of the famous 1947 Robert C. Wiles photograph of Evelyn McHale, the woman who jumped from the Empire State Building and landed on a parked limousine in an eerily composed pose. Goldblatt told American cinematographer in April 1987 that he thought the image was haunting, that he brought it with him, and that Donner offered him the film on the spot. Donner had the opening scene rewritten to echo the photograph directly. The Long Beach International Tower became the filming location specifically because its exterior geometry matched the proportions Goldblatt had worked out while studying the image. The shot uses 3 Reflex cameras on a sliding rig along the building's exterior. This is the kind of creative reference that never appears in a production meeting. It is one person walking into a room with a print in their hand and a specific idea about what grief looks like when it becomes an image. Goldblatt's visual approach influenced how action films handled death for years after. Number 9. The Christmas backdrop of Lethal Weapon is so embedded in the film's identity that the holiday feels inseparable from the story itself. Riggs's grief is specifically a Christmas grief. The lights and carols and seasonal goodwill that surround a man who has nothing left to celebrate are not just decoration. They are a dramatic argument about what loneliness feels like when everyone around you is supposed to be happy. Principal photography ran from August through November 1986. To make Los Angeles read as December, the production negotiated with city officials to install Christmas decorations on Hollywood Boulevard several months before the holiday season was scheduled to begin. Shane Black has said in multiple interviews that he deliberately sets his scripts at Christmas because the holiday creates a specific emotional frequency, a moment when people are forced to stop and assess their lives. He carried this instinct across his entire career. The Long Kiss Goodnight, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Iron Man 3, and The Nice Guys are all set during the Christmas season for exactly the same reason. Producer Joel Silver was reportedly so struck by the effect of a Christmas-decorated Los Angeles as an action backdrop that he brought the concept to his next production. That production was Die Hard. One writer's aesthetic preference shaped two of the defining action films of the decade. The Christmas setting in Lethal Weapon is not atmosphere. It is a worldview built into the geography of every scene. Number 8. The theatrical version of Lethal Weapon introduces Riggs in his trailer and in bed, establishing his suicidal state through quiet private despair. It is a restrained opening for a character this extreme. What most audiences have never seen is what Donner originally planned. A sequence restored in Donner's director's cut released in 1997 shows Riggs walking directly into the line of fire of an active sniper shooting at children at City Terrace Elementary School in Monterey Park. He empties his Beretta into the gunman without hesitation and without apparent concern for whether he survives the encounter. The sequence was removed from the theatrical cut before release. 3 additional scenes were also restored. In one, Riggs smashes his television with a beer bottle inside his trailer. In another, Murtaugh's hands visibly shake at the gun range, a detail of professional anxiety that the theatrical cut eliminates entirely. In the most quietly devastating restoration, Riggs pays a woman $100 simply to watch the Three Stooges with him in his trailer because he cannot stand to be alone. Together, these 4 scenes change the emotional register of Riggs from a suicidal loner to a man in active daily grief. The theatrical Riggs is a character study. The director's cut Riggs is something closer to a portrait of someone coming apart in real time, one ordinary day after another. Number 7. Mr. Joshua is one of the few screen villains in the action genre who registers as genuinely dangerous rather than dramatically dangerous. His stillness is unsettling. His capacity for casual violence feels specific rather than theatrical. There is a particular quality to Bussey's performance that suggests the character has crossed lines most people could not approach. John Saxon was originally cast in the role but was already committed to A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 and had to withdraw. Gary Busey, an Oscar nominee whose career had slowed significantly, personally requested a chance to read for the part despite not having auditioned in years. He got the meeting, Busey lost 60 pounds for the role, and bleached his hair platinum blonde. He told Empire that he built the character around a specific psychological premise. Joshua would walk through his grandmother's blood to retrieve a postage stamp without looking back. He developed a fixed stare for the moments when Joshua removes his sunglasses on camera, what he called the eyes of a shark which has no life. The arm-burning lighter scene with Mitchell Ryan was written as a direct homage to G. Gordon Liddy's 1975 autobiography, in which Liddy described holding a flame to his own palm to prove his pain tolerance to himself. The physical and psychological preparation Busey undertook is visible in every frame. Joshua does not look like a movie villain. Number 6. The backyard fight between Riggs and Joshua has a quality that separates it from virtually every other action film finale of its era. It looks like 2 people actually trying to kill each other rather than 2 performers executing choreography. The violence has weight and consequence. Every hold and counter feels like it was chosen for effectiveness rather than visual impact. Richard Donner hired Rorion Gracie to train Mel Gibson and Gary Busey in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for the sequence. Gracie was not yet publicly known in the United States. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu had no mainstream American profile. Lethal Weapon was released 6 years before Royce Gracie, Rorion's brother, used the same techniques to win the inaugural UFC tournament in November 1993, and introduced the martial art to mainstream audiences. Gibson and Busey trained together for 4 hours a day over 6 weeks. The triangle choke Riggs uses to finish Joshua is a legitimate jiu-jitsu submission hold that Rorion Gracie taught Gibson specifically for that sequence. Donner also hired Cedric Adams to incorporate capoeira elements and Dennis Newsom for jailhouse rock techniques, combining 3 genuine fighting systems into a single confrontation. Rorion Gracie told Aikido Journal that the production assistant who brought him onto the film had witnessed one of his actual competition fights. He came to the production with no Hollywood experience and changed the physical language of the finale from movie fighting into something closer to competitive martial arts. Number 5. The rain during the finale of Lethal Weapon feels like weather. Unpredictable, physical, perfectly suited to 2 men trying to destroy each other on a suburban lawn. The storm gives the sequence a specific visual texture, a cold, exhausted quality that matches where both characters have arrived after 2 hours of film. None of that rain was real. Cinematographer Steven Goldblatt told American Cinematographer in April 1987 that the sequence was filmed over 4 consecutive nights from dusk to dawn on the Blondie Street backlot at Warner Bros. Ranch, a location that was later demolished for new soundstage construction. The rain was produced by a burst fire hydrant rig combined with Ritter wind machines, set to simulate helicopter downwash. Gibson and Busey performed the full fight sequence in its entirety on each of those 4 nights, in soaked clothing without significant stunt double replacement. Goldblatt's lighting design used Christmas string lights, helicopter searchlights, and a progression from artificial darkness to a simulated dawn to give the sequence a visual arc across its 4-minute runtime. The exhaustion in both performances by the final night is real, and Donner kept it. 4 consecutive nights of full-contact physical work in manufactured rain at 3 in the morning produces a specific quality of fatigue that no amount of performance technique fully replicates. The most quoted line in the film has its own story. Danny Glover did not find it in the script. Number 4. I'm getting too old for this is so thoroughly associated with Danny Glover and this franchise that it is almost impossible to imagine the films without it. It is the verbal signature of the entire series. It appears in all 4 films and has been quoted in television shows, parodies, and other movies for nearly 4 decades. Shane Black did not write it. Jeffrey Bone did not write it. Nobody wrote it. Glover improvised the line on set when Donner asked him to find something organic for the scene. Glover has said in multiple interviews that the phrase came directly from construction workers he used to walk past on New York City streets who would shout variations of it at each other across job sites. He took something from the real world and placed it inside the world of the film, and Donner recognized immediately that it was too good to be a one-time delivery. Glover was 40 years old playing a character written as 50 when he first said it on camera. He has knowingly quoted the line in Maverick, Almost Christmas, and Psych, and the phrase has accumulated meaning with each repetition across 37 years of pop culture, not bad for a line that originated on a Manhattan sidewalk and was never in a screenplay. The music underneath those moments carries its own unexpected origin. Eric Clapton's guitar theme for the film was not composed for the film. Number 3. The electric guitar melody that plays under Riggs's loneliest moments is one of the most recognized pieces of action film music from the 1980s. It is mournful and specific. It sounds like a man sitting alone at 3 in the morning. It also sounds exactly like that because it was originally written for a completely different story about loss, and Richard Donner refused to let it go. Editor Stuart Baird used composer Michael Kamen's score from the 1985 BBC miniseries Edge of Darkness as a temp track while cutting the film. Donner, who is widely documented as someone who develops strong attachments to temp tracks, hired Kamen with one explicit condition: Clapton had to come with him. Clapton and Kamen had worked together on Edge of Darkness the previous year, and that collaboration had already produced the guitar sound Donner wanted. The saxophone theme associated with Murtaugh came from David Sanborn, a Juilliard classmate of Kamen's and former bandmate from the New York Rockin' Ensemble. The 3-way collaboration between Kamen, Clapton, and Sanborn was assembled entirely through prior personal relationships, not through any formal search process. In 2010, 23 years after Lethal Weapon, Mel Gibson starred in the feature film adaptation of Edge of Darkness, the BBC miniseries that had supplied the temp track that defined his character's musical identity. The theme that introduced him to the world as Riggs was originally written for the story he eventually stepped into as its lead. Number 2. Lethal Weapon 2 exists as a crowd-pleasing expansion of everything the first film established. The chemistry is warmer, the comedy is broader, and the franchise's commercial identity is fully formed by the end of it. What almost no one knows is that the film nearly ended the entire series before it had properly begun. Joel Silver commissioned Shane Black to write the sequel almost immediately after the first film opened in theaters. Black co-wrote a script with novelist Warren Murphy and titled it Play Dirty. In their version, Riggs dies in the final confrontation. The last scene is a recording Riggs made before his death, playing back for Murtaugh as the film ends. The Los Angeles Times reported in January 1989 that Warner Bros. Rejected the script outright and called it too grim to continue a franchise. Black's agent confirmed that the studio's response was essentially that you cannot do this to a character audiences want to see again. Black walked away after 6 months of work and accepted a kill fee. He has since said publicly that Play Dirty is the best script he has ever written. Richard Donner shot Lethal Weapon 2 with 2 completed endings, one where Riggs survives, and one where he dies. Test audience screenings rejected the death ending so completely that Donner later said the reaction was unlike anything he had seen at a preview. Jeffrey Boehm came back to write the version that was released. Number 1. The trailer park scene where Riggs sits on the floor of his trailer with a Beretta in his mouth is the moment Lethal Weapon stops being an action film and becomes something harder to name. It is a performance of genuine despair inside a commercial studio picture, and it does not feel like a performance. It feels like something being revealed rather than enacted. According to Richard Donner's Blu-ray commentary and multiple documented production accounts, Gibson asked for a real live blank to be chambered in the Beretta before filming the scene. The gun's decocking safety mechanism allowed for a chambered round with the hammer down. The moment of putting the barrel into his own mouth was Gibson's decision alone, made on set without prior discussion and without instruction from Donner. Gibson improvised his line to the photograph of his dead wife in that same session. "I'll see you later, I'll see you much later." Director Franco Zeffirelli later said he cast Gibson as Hamlet in 1990, specifically after watching this single scene. Donner confirmed in Vanity Fair that Gibson was drinking heavily during production, and that Riggs' self-destruction was not entirely invented for the camera. Gibson has acknowledged publicly that suicidal despair was not unfamiliar to him personally during this period of his life. The performance in that scene is not research, it is not technique. It is an actor using something real on a commercial set, without explaining why. Lethal Weapon was not supposed to be the film it became. The director was a third choice. The script came from a trash can. The casting failed twice. A second writer rewrote it without credit. The original ending was cut for lack of money. And the sequel that almost killed the franchise was sitting in a drawer before the first film opened. Every iconic element came from a specific person making a decision under a constraint that could easily have gone another way. What survived is a film still rewatched and requoted nearly 40 years later. If this video surprised you, drop your favorite fact in the comments. Like, subscribe, and share this with someone who loves this movie as much as you do. And as always, I'm getting too old for this. We'll see you next time.